Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something that's been, well, literally heating up cities on the front lines of climate change.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And definitely as urgent as it is complex.
Right. You sent over that podcast about it, the one that was talking about urban heat islands, and it really got me thinking. And then I was like, okay, let me look at the research that you shared from the IPCC about their upcoming special report on climate change in cities. It's kind of a big deal that they're dedicating a whole report just to cities.
It is. For the IPCC, it's like shining a giant spotlight on the issue. This report isn't just another study. It signals a major shift in how the world's top scientists are thinking about climate change and the pivotal role cities play.
Okay, so before we get into all the details, can you remind me why cities are so important in this whole climate change thing? I live in one, but it's not like I'm causing a heat wave every time I order takeout, right?
Well, about that takeout, think of it this way. Every item you use, every light you switch on, even that takeout container has a carbon footprint. And cities, they're like these massive concentrated zones of consumption, which translates to a hefty impact on the planet.
So it is kind of like I'm causing a tiny heat wave with every late night delivery order.
Not quite, but you're getting the idea. Cities consume a massive amount of the world's resources, leading to, you guessed it, a huge chunk of global emissions.
Okay, that makes sense. But what's the IPCC saying about all of this?
Well, one of the things they're highlighting is this idea of consumption-based emissions. They're not just looking at what's produced inside a city's limits, but also the emissions from everything its residents consume, no matter where it's made. That new phone you bought, those emissions are part of your city's footprint, even if it was made across the world.
So cities are kind of like the epicenter of the problem.
In a way, yes. And it's not just the emissions, it's the people, too. The report projects that by 2050, nearly 70% of the world's population will be crammed into urban areas. That's a lot of people directly in the path of potential climate hazards.
Hazards, like what? Give me the scary stuff.
Think about it. More people living in cities means more people who are exposed to things like extreme heat waves, rising sea levels, and those intense rainstorms that seem to be happening more often. And let's not forget about the strain on city infrastructure. Our transportation systems, our energy grids, they weren't built for this kind of pressure cooker.
Wow. Okay, you definitely just pushed my anxiety button with that one. But it's not like everyone's just sitting around waiting for disaster to strike, right? Surely the IPCC has some good news.
They do, and that's what makes all of this so fascinating. Cities might be at the heart of the problem, but they're also uniquely positioned to be part of the solution.
Okay, so cities are like this double-edged sword. Huge contributors to climate change, but also potential saviors. But how does the IPCC go from sounding the alarm to actually finding solutions? Their reports are famous for being super thorough, right?
Yeah, they really are. Hundreds of scientists, thousands of studies. It's this massive undertaking to try and distill all of that knowledge into something that is actually actionable.
For this city's report, they had this big scoping meeting, right? What was the whole point of that?
So basically, it's to create the roadmap for the entire report, almost like a team of expert chefs getting together to plan out every course of this Michelin star-worthy meal. They decide what goes into each chapter, what research is the most important, and even just what questions they're going to try to answer.
So a really high-stakes brainstorming session, but with less pizza and more existential dread.
Pretty much. But one thing I thought was really interesting about this meeting was the diversity of voices that they brought in. You have your climatologists and urban planners, of course, but then also social scientists, economists, even representatives from indigenous communities.
Wait, indigenous communities? What's their perspective on cities and climate change?
It's crucial. For a really long time, those voices were missing from the global conversation. And they bring generations of knowledge about living sustainably and adapting to changing environments. They've been on the front lines for centuries.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's we can learn so much from people who've lived in harmony with nature for generations.
Exactly. And this report seems really focused on making sure those voices are heard. They even have a whole chapter exploring solutions by city type and region, acknowledging that a one-size-fits-all approach just won't cut it.
Okay, so they've got all these experts, a detailed outline, and a clear focus on local solutions. That's impressive, but let's get down to brass tacks. What are some specific things that cities can actually do to combat climate change?
Well, for one, they could start by getting smart about how they grow. The report really dives into this concept of compact city development, which basically means designing cities to be more walkable, bikeable, and transit-oriented.
So less sprawling suburbs, more vibrant, walkable neighborhoods, kind of like how European cities have been doing it for centuries.
Exactly. And not just for charm. Think about it. Shorter commutes, fewer cars on the road, which means less pollution, less congestion, and healthier lifestyles for everyone. It's a win-win.
I'm here for any excuse to live somewhere with charming cafes and cobblestone streets.
Well, and there's a bonus. Those charming narrow streets often mean less space for cars, which pushes people towards walking, biking, or public transit.
Right. It's like the city is designed to nudge you towards making those greener choices. What else did this meeting uncover? What are some other big ideas that cities are exploring?
One that is gaining a lot of traction is green infrastructure. Think parks, green roofs, even entire walls that are covered in plants. It's not just about aesthetics. These green spaces act like the city's air conditioner, absorbing heat and reducing the urban heat island effect.
You mentioned urban heat islands earlier. Can you explain what those are?
Imagine you are walking down a street on like a scorching hot day. One side has all these trees, the other side is just all concrete and buildings. You can feel the difference in temperature, right? That's the urban heat island effect. Cities trap heat, which makes them significantly hotter than the areas that are surrounding them.
That's why I always feel like I need to take an extra shower after a day of running errands downtown. So more trees equals cooler cities. Got it. Anything else?
There's a lot more. They're also looking at everything from smart grids that can handle a surge in renewable energy sources to creating more resilient buildings that can actually withstand extreme weather events.
It's kind of wild to think about how we can re-engineer our cities to be more climate friendly. But all of this innovation, all these changes, they don't happen overnight, right? And I'm guessing it doesn't come cheap either.
You're right. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And the IPCC report doesn't shy away from that at all. In fact, they have one whole chapter that focuses specifically on how to make these changes happen faster and more effectively. They actually call it How to Facilitate and Accelerate Change. And it really gets into the nitty-gritty of things like governance, policy, and of course the big one, finance.
So where does the money come from? Do cities have to fund all of this on their own?
It's not all on cities to foot the bill. The report actually talks about needing a multi-level approach. So that's with cities, national governments, and even international organizations all working together. They highlight things like green bonds, which can help attract private investment in climate-friendly projects, and then also how cities can tap into global funds that are specifically designed for climate action.
So it's like this giant puzzle where everyone needs to play their part to make it all fit together?
Exactly. It's about creating the right conditions for change, from supportive policies and regulations to more innovative financing models that incentivize these green investments.
This has been a real eye-opener. We started with my takeout container and somehow ended up talking about global finance. But I think I'm starting to get the bigger picture now. It's not just about swapping out our light bulbs or planting a few trees. It's really about fundamentally rethinking how we design, build, and live in our cities.
And realizing that those choices we make today are going to have a ripple effect for generations to come.
Yeah. It's a lot to process, but it's also empowering knowing that we actually have the knowledge and the tools to create a better future, a cooler, greener, more livable future. And that starts right here in our cities.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great about this report. It doesn't just point out all of the challenges, it also showcases the incredible ingenuity and resilience of cities all over the world. It gives me hope that we can actually tackle this challenge head on and create a future where both people and the planet can thrive.
I love that. A hopeful and inspiring note to end on. And for those of you listening who want to dive even deeper into this topic, and we know you're out there, we'll have links to the IPCC report and some other resources in the show notes. Until next time, keep those brain cells firing, and remember, no matter how complex the topic, we break it down right here on The Deep Dive.